like strict line work and then like very sequential?
It's a very well. It's a very step by step kind of thing. Not a lot of like it's. I'm trying to finish one stage before I move on to the next.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Just because
cool.
and there is definitely still some back and forth. Like once I get up to a certain level, I might realize maybe there's a bit more I can do on line work, or sometimes I will realize that I've completely forgotten an element. Like
Mhm.
actually, for example, does it actually show up? No. Oh, okay. No, I kind of cheated it. Okay. Well, you can see it between inks and between the inks and the pencil layer. There's an element that I won't name, but I'll just
Oh,
circle it.
it's a
But that
foot.
did not exist from one to the next, and I wanted to make sure it was included. That I ended up, you know, kind of hacking in there.
Right. I guess that you got to be careful with what you say regarding that, because
Exactly. I'm trying to be somewhat nebulous and non-specific. So let's see. So yeah, here's where it's kind of tricky. I know someone when I was talking about this stream tonight, it's a funny position to be in because I have this image done, I have the next image, and then the image after that pretty much done as well. So I'm trying to think about how to roll that out. Um, so it could be tricky. So what I could do is run through those images really quickly, um, or yeah, I'm not sure. This is a stream without a plan, but I have an idea. Actually, you know what? Because you guys actually jumped into the stream, um, I am going to just open up the next image. I just wanted to make sure that I hid my layers because I haven't named my layers in a Twitch friendly way. Um, I still am using character names and that kind of thing
okay.
to separate them. Flora Shark says, it's funny how distracting all the flats were until you added the light. Yes, every time. And the atmosphere layer changes it so drastically. Very cool. Well, yeah, and that's one of the things that I actually really like about it, too, is that there's a certain amount of planning that takes place, but there's also these great surprises that show up in the process. So here's the next image. Actually, there are some elements. There's one element to this that I was thinking of meddling with. So you are the first to see
That's very cool.
the next shot. Um, I think I'm going to. I was looking at this image, and I am going to pull out the caustics. Um, and for anyone who is not familiar with the term, caustics are the wiggly lights that you get reflected off of water, the lines that kind of dance around. Um,
Oh,
as fun as they are, they're not what I want yet. So I'm just going to pop those out and see how it reads. Cameron 88. Does having an open mind to change still a good thing that far into the process? Like you're at the lighting stage and you think you want to change the background sort of thing. Yeah, I rarely want to make huge changes, but it does still factor into it a little bit. Um, there are still definitely some things that I would like to do, but it's usually fairly minor. Adding an element or shifting something around. Rarely is it like I want to completely redo something. Hopefully, and that's part of doing the being pretty thorough about going through the stages is that hopefully you're able to see that kind of stuff at the thumbnail layer, and if not, then at the pencil layer for sure. I mean, each stage is going to reveal new new issues. But let's see. Now that I'm looking at this, is there anything else I really wanted to do? I'm just going to add one more
So how
curve
do you think
layer.
about
How do I think about what?
the line weight?
Line weight.
Yeah.
Well, so line weight obviously is, because this is a pretty line heavy, a line focused kind of project. It's pretty high up there on my priorities, things that I'm concerned about. So what I've been trying to do is mostly just remain pretty consistent, so that almost everything is drawn with a I use like a 20 for my inking. It's like a 20 pixel wide brush with some size jitter, with not jitter but size pressure applied to
Right.
it. So it has some wiggle room, but it stays kind of within some parameters. And then what I do also is I kind of thicken the line around my elements, just in terms of like foreground, midground, background, to kind of provide just a little indication of depth through line.
Yeah.
But that's about as far as I go. Like, you could go really nuts and say like everything close up gets a darker line, everything far back gets a thinner line, and that would really get you that depth. But I'm not concerned at going that far with it. That would kind of be an extra level of consideration to the inking stage that honestly I'm not that worried about.
Yeah. But have you generally like made the outside lines thicker than the
Yeah,
descriptive? Okay.
yeah,
And
definitely.
also, the boy's right arm.
Yeah.
It looks like it's thicker than the line weight of the left arm, which isn't foreshortened.
Yes. Yeah, there is definitely some of that. Like, and when there's overlap, usually when I'm trying to indicate overlap, there ends up being like a bit of thickness that I'll try to use to imply that, just to make whatever's coming forward, when two things meet, whatever's coming forward, that gets the thicker line. Generally,
Okay.
that is often my preference. You won't find it everywhere necessarily, but generally that tends to be the case. Oh, wait, so we got a question here. Cork Bottle. Hey, mate, longtime fan. You've been a big inspiration in my own work. Great to see you on Twitch. Well, thanks for joining us. I do find people will be getting to the end of a piece and I feel like it's not strong enough, and instead of messing around with it, they just restart it. How do I feel about that type of mindset? Oh, that would be exhausting. That would be really exhausting. Yeah, I think I've said before, there's a lot of, and it's funny because I actually just listened to an artist saying the opposite of this, and I wouldn't come to blows. I think I disagree in a friendly way, that they're saying that the early stages of an image are where you really struggle and fight and learn the most. I think there's an extra bit of struggle and fight and learning that happens at the end, where you actually like really wrestle the image to the point where you can say it's finished. That's actually a pretty monumental task right at the end, where you learn a lot. Unartifex says hello there. Hi, Unartifex. So, I think I'm actually good with this image. I'm just going to be, this is, I was able to find some time, plus these images actually came together pretty fast. So I'm actually going to be blasting through a couple here, which means I might just do a posting blitz tomorrow and just put these images out, so that you get a chance to actually, so everybody gets a chance to see them. This might not happen every time. So I am going to, I still have my layers turned off. Good. Okay, I don't want to ruin anything for you. So there's that image. And then a very simple one. This one actually was started and finished in one night, which is very rare. Must have been one hell of a cup of coffee, hey Matt? Yeah. So this one is the following image. And at this point we are up to 4203. So let me just move it over. Sorry about the flashing there and jumping around. So yeah, there we go. That is the next one. Like I said, pretty simple.
I guess oh, sorry, God.
No, go for it.
Oh, okay, cool. So the shadows do a lot for the composition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one here, I will just go through the layers. Actually, you know what? This one, okay, this one's not so bad. This one I labeled a little bit more, a little less spoilery, so I think it should be okay. I'm going to turn layers back on. 1 second here. I'm just going to go to... Okay, wait, 1 sec. Just going to pull it up so I actually have it. Actually use my Be Right Back screen. Okay. Okay, there we go. All right, so this one, the layers should be appearing here. So I have my sketches at this point. So the sketch, the thumbnail on this one was pretty simple, and I hadn't actually figured out anything for the background. I've got a dark side with those layer names. So here I've got, super simple thumbnail. Just had generally the overall pose. That right there's a masterpiece. Thank you. Love seeing super rough thumbnails compared to the finished one. Yeah, it's fun. I was kind of surprised how interested people began to be as I was posting more and more at this stage. So again, pencils. Had to resolve because I made zero decisions as far as what I wanted the background to be on this one. I kind of figured it would be contextual. Glad I'm not the only one with really messy thumbnails. Well, exactly. Well, that's what they're for too. Just get the idea down. So same process. Just doing the sketch layer, and then here is just the inks and it's all. If I switch out my, it's got like there's the diffuse and all that stuff. And then I've got my lights and shadows and, I've got my mask in there. Let's take that out. Where are you? Mask. No. There we go. Okay, cool. All right. Cork Bottle says, line art love. Yes. Yoon Artifacts, very cool to see process. Love the ways you tell a story in your work. Well, thank you. That's definitely my priority, is trying to make sure story comes first. And so let's see here. Got another question?
Yeah. So, what does that mask do?
Oh, just with the lines that I had there? The mask that I was talking about was just, I had this this white, so I duplicated the line layer and I used the white, and actually what I did with that, it's like just dirty little trick. I was just I used that to select out some of the reflections. Let me see if I can find it again. There we go. So I'll zoom way in here. So I just use that. You can see there's like an area where just above the line where the reflection kicks out, and that's just sort of to create the illusion of depth there. And so it was a very very simple task of just like duplicating the layer, nudging it up as high as I wanted it, and then just using that as the selection to get rid of those.
Yeah.
Quick and dirty, but it works. Floor Shack says, yeah, I have sketchbooks just covered with post-it notes inside for just jotting down ideas while at the office. Absolutely.
Oh, another question I had was regarding your use of color.
Mm-hmm.
So, is that mainly determined by like the color of the sky?
Yeah, I would say like Shadows. It's really just deciding. I think mostly what's your light source, and then thinking of
Mhm.
something complementary to work against it, or something that there's like the light source and the color of that, and then there's the what all the bounce light might be. For example, in this setting, there's a hit of green in the shadows, but it's mostly blue, um, and that's been kind of my guideline for how I'm handling this environment.
Yeah.
On some scenes previously where it's kind of more on the ship, in some cases I've used red in the shadows just because I want that the big red sail to kind of be bouncing light everywhere.
Yeah.
So the shadows are getting really filled up with red. So yeah, it kind of depends. Trying to think, like in this environment, I still want that cool reflected light. Um, yeah, and so that's in here. And then
Yeah.
actually I have my in my grading layer here. Um, this is if I turn off the grading, like this I would consider like pre-grading. This I would consider being like the true color. Like if you would imagine you're on set on a film set with a camera and you just took a picture for continuity's sake, this would be the kind of color scenario you would get. And then after
Yeah.
that, I turn the grading back on, and this is kind of more the emotion of the scene and what I want the final image to feel like.
Mhm.
Floor,
So,
I'm just going to quickly read a chat here. Flora Shark says,
yeah,
do you actually freehand all the geometric stuff or use paths since they look so symmetrical and neat? Thanks. I actually have a some created images for that, but then I use those as the sketch and I ink over top by hand. So they're like hand but assisted, if that makes sense. And then Cameron 88, is that debris folder a secret folder? No, it just has debris in it. I'll flip that on and off. That's the debris. No secrets. So yeah, man, that's funny. I'm happy with this one too. So it might almost be worth at this point. I'll probably just post these both in the morning, and then I'm gonna start on the next one. So let me open that up. Let's see, Mr. Bob 8822, can you talk a bit about your process philosophy for coming up with color palettes for characters, especially when it comes to designing for a group party of characters? Well, it depends on what you're trying to say and do. I think that, um, like with everything, this is the thing that I will probably say that people start making fun of me for eventually. Um, this is going to be hmm. This might be an interesting one to start next. Sorry, to answer the question, thinking about what the characters are in the story, what associations you want to draw, and make, what kind of characters you want to, what kind of archetypes your characters represent, what their hopes and dreams are. Like there's all of this sort of story based information that will help lead your um, lead you towards um, choosing what it is that you want to say, and then you can start choosing colors based on the emotion of it and the feel that you want to get, and I think from that point, let's see. Yeah, I think. Sorry, it's tricky. I'm trying to do too many things at once. I need to actually answer the question. It's I mean, partly thinking about it as graphic design too. Like you want the characters to actually read and to be different and um, uh, to be differentiated from each other. So trying to pick general color themes that separate them or that fit. I hope that answers it. Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place here. Um, but yeah, I think it's really just first and foremost just figure out for yourself where they fit in the story and how you can support that. Did I plan every scene from the beginning, or do I decide what I'm going to draw for each part of the story as I go? It's definitely all planned, or at least outlined, and then I can kind of pick and choose and change things up. Someone's got to go eat. Alrighty. What do my fellow workmates think of my project? Not many of them are even aware of it, actually. But a few people have reached out and they've said they enjoyed it, so it's been kind of cool that way. And do I plan on turning this into a book? Yes, I do. Someday. So I'm in an even more unique position this time because I don't actually have a thumbnail for this image. So I'm going to be thumbnailing from scratch.
Cool.
Yeah, so here we have a moment where I am going to pull the last couple images back in, and they're going to kind of be my touchstone here. Yeah, screw it, we do it live. That's right, exactly. When I work in a group environment, do I have many opinions and advice? How do you know when to push for your own design choices? Yeah, I think that's a good. Like, it's very different to do this in a game development setting because you're really, everybody has a say. There's all sorts of different factors. You're trying to solve a lot of different things with one image. So it's there are certain things that you just kind of have to know that you as a concept artist, you're making your decisions for a reason, and while you want everybody's opinion, you want to help try to solve it. There are also areas where it's good for the group to trust you, and for you to be able to say, you know what, visually this isn't gonna help, or this isn't what we want, or I think we're heading in the wrong direction. It's a constant negotiation. Artifacts. This is exciting. How was my experience with the ILM challenge? It was really, really good. So good, in fact, that I credit it for kicking Tellurion off in a lot of ways, because it was a bunch of work, and it was like a bigger chunk of work than I had really attempted personally. And so that in a long time, as long as I can remember, really, except for maybe the My Hero story, but it was obviously at like a higher resolution, and so I think that I'm still so thankful that they gave me a runner-up in that, and the phone call that I got to have with the art directors. Like I've said, some of the things that they said were so encouraging that it kind of made me realize, like, I really should just stop putting this off. I should just do this thing. Is that the Star Wars challenge thing from ArtStation? Yes, it is. Yeah. So it definitely got me thinking, okay, it's about time that I did my own thing. Yeah, so I'm very thankful to ArtStation for putting that on, and for ILM for being as involved in it as they were, and it was pretty awesome. Thanks for the reply. Also a huge fan after listening to my GDC talk from before. Oh, thanks. Oh, the ACAD one? I'm glad to hear it. Yeah, it's always encouraging to hear that was useful or did something positive. What books, movies, games are my biggest inspirations in my work? Well, games, I would say Riven is probably number one. And I don't know if it's a huge inspiration, but the original Thief series is still one of my favorites of all time. But like movies and books, I keep going back to Dune, and there's a book called John Dies at the End that is one of my favorites. Probably in part because of how it's too long of a story to talk about how I came across it, but I really enjoy that one. It's been a lot of music. I'm as a side note, I'm not playing music this time. The last time I tried, I definitely got a few pings from the copyright drone
Ah,
monsters. So
you're like,
yeah,
lay low.
I figured I'll back off. I'll back off. I'm not gonna. That's not a fight. If you want music, put on your own and knock yourself out.
Cool.
I'm still kind of curating my soundtrack. And I'll probably. I'm thinking now. I'll probably just like add a playlist to my YouTube channel. That's just my Tellurion soundtrack. But I'm just
Like,
kind of adding the last little bits and shuffling it around. Sorry, what were you gonna say?
oh, um, so in your ACAD talk, you mentioned
Mm-hmm.
corporate sandblasting as
Yes.
like, no, council sandblasting.
Uh
So
huh.
in your current work environment, do you still have to be diligent to justify your design decisions? So like in a board meeting, like an executive goes like, "Oh, I think the hair should be blue." Like you can be like, "Oh, well, actually, it should maintain its current color because X, Y, and Z or story parameters."
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I've been really trying to do is get really specific. Like anytime now that we put something in, we try to make sure that there's at least notes. So sometimes it's as explicit as like the graphic design things drawn right on. Um,
Mhm.
but we'll try to just because there are some people who can see it right away and they get it, and some people that until it's actually explicitly called out, they won't. But when they do, they're really excited. So you could say, I'll try to use a non-specific example. Well, I'll use Han Solo, or it's like, the council's looking at a drawing of a guy wearing a vest, and like, he's just a guy wearing a vest. Can't you make some like? Can you put some blue LEDs on him and maybe give him some armor or something like that? Like, this is science fiction, isn't it? But if you include in the actual image like notes pointing to different things and say, um, he is a scruffy smuggler and a little bit, he's a thrill seeker and he's kind of proud and so here are some reasons why he's in this outfit. Then they can just on their own time check that out and be like, I see, I get it. They're like, then at that point they're in on the secret,
Right.
and they're legitimately in on it. Like it's like, oh, I see, you're doing this for a reason. And the more and more, like, because right now we've done it enough that the team I'm with right now, like even writers and designers, they actually know enough. Like they've now been brought up a bit more in that lingo and in what we're doing. So
Mhm.
they will actually take it upon themselves to look for it first before it's explained.
Yeah.
Partly because it's just more fun. Like if you can figure it out for yourself, it feels pretty awesome. All right, let's see. Playlist of epic music. Exactly. Super inspired and motivated seeing my submissions. Oh, thank you. There was so much high level work. Thanks a lot. It was really fun and kind of bizarre to work with the Star Wars universe stuff because it's one of those things where it's so familiar, but if you don't like, I rarely ever actually draw Star Wars stuff. So unless you're actually suddenly doing it, you don't realize this language, this visual language so well. Um, but when you actually have to do it, it's like, oh, maybe I don't. I made reference the other night to like, if you get a bunch of people around and you say, okay, everybody draw Homer Simpson or Mickey Mouse or whatever, and you think like, oh, I totally know what that looks like. Um, may want to fix that butt. It's got a crack in it. Yeah. Oh no. Enhance. Um, everybody thinks that they know what these characters look like, but when it comes time to actually put pencil to paper, you realize very quickly, like, oh, okay, I just made a whole lot of assumptions. Star Wars is a lot like that. You're like, I know how to draw Star Wars. Come on. But especially for the first few rounds, like they were very explicit about, um, this has to be original setting, Star Wars stuff. Like you're not allowed to invent anything for the first little bit. It all had to be pre-existing. So you were doing a lot of like research and just straight up copying design elements, and it made you kind of appreciate a lot of the all the awesome Ralph McQuarrie stuff, and especially when you're looking at looking at ships, I just found it was really funny. Like when you're looking at ships and things like that. Hey, Marvin Marvels, good to have you. It you, you realize when you're looking at it with a critical kind of research eye, how much just model kit bashing nonsense it is, or it was, which I love. You know, it's like these ships, they're just covered in science fiction gobbledygook, but it worked, you know. And so actually that encouraged me for the later rounds to really lighten up when it came to designing stuff, to designing new stuff, because it was like, well, the visual language for Star Wars is just, to put it a little callously, it's science fiction. Relax. Like that. In doing the research, that is what I would. That's how I would describe Star Wars. It's like, relax, science fiction. And so it's kind of cool. It's kind of cool that something so beloved we got a chance to really dive into.
Oh, so will this piece have a lot of rim lighting?
This one?
Yeah, I'm guessing that that's the light source, or probably it is like it's like the sun thing. You don't have to explicitly say. But I'm assuming it is.
This is actually going to be very foreground. This is going to be a pretty shallow one. I kind of just want to get this pose, get this moment across, and then we'll move on to the next one. So we'll see.
Ooh, okay, yeah, gotcha.
Yeah, so this is pretty close to the foreground. Flora Shark says, you said your brush size is like 20. Wow, how big is your canvas size? Yeah, it's at like 32 by 18. Dry White Snowflake says that may be my favorite description of Star Wars visual style. All right. And Johnny Boy, bubble wrap on the snow speeder seat straps. Right. And that's all. That's it. That's it all the way down. It's just finding stuff that it's like, stop worrying and just say it. You know, like speeder bike. Cool. That's a fun idea. That's neat. What do you need? Make it look science fiction-y and like it flies and it goes fast. All right, put some fins on it. Put some, like, we need a texture here. Spray paint this bubble wrap. Sure, like it's, I don't know. It's great. It's great. I love it.
Do you think that kind of like design philosophy was like made it into the prequel designs as well?
Well, that's the thing, you know. It's like with every movie, and with all the time that passes, it significance is shoveled upon it, which is an unfortunate thing. Like it just says like, oh no, we're designing Star Wars, man. We got it. This is gonna be a thing. That I think maybe and I grew up on, you know, the Phantom Menace art book.
Yeah.
Like top absolute highest level respect for that team and what they did. But you know, even like for the prequels, they're coming in later after Star Wars has this like mass to it. That I imagine would be hard. The one thing I do now in retrospect actually appreciate about the prequels that I can appreciate now because I don't see it in the new movies. As nice as the design, the art in the new movies is awesome. But I think, you know, what the original Star Wars movies were Lucas's homage to pulp science fiction. And then the prequels, if you watch them with that in mind, it's a different tone, but it's still an homage to pulp in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And that's one. And unfortunately, the new movies are an homage to Star Wars. And I think there's something that it's something that happens in IP development where if a if a franchise becomes too self-referential, they're looking too much at themselves and not at their original source material. I think it can kind of start to muddy things a little bit.
Like become more homogenous.
I think so. Yeah, because you start it. Yeah, it almost like closes off the universe. Because I mean, you look at most things that were added to the prequels, and it's like, fins on stuff, and like that's as Flash Gordon as it gets. And that's not Star Wars. Like no one would have said, "Oh yeah, that's totally Star Wars. Put some bright yellow and chrome ships with fins in there." Like that would be awesome. Or like put like 1950s, like Flash Gordon fins on the stormtroopers. Do that. It's like, no, that's not Star Wars. But it's because that reference, the reference was still there for Lucas. He could draw from somewhere outside and breathe life into the Star Wars universe. But if you've kind of, and I'm not saying that they've done this, but the more a franchise closes itself off and says, no, we are just this thing now, they don't have as much life to pull in. Mm-hmm. Star Wars was an homage to Star Wars. That's a Yo-Dog moment if ever I heard one. Yeah, exactly. What can we do to make this science fiction? Put Doc Brown in the driver's seat? Yeah, well, there you go. That'll always do it.
Do you ever find inspiration from mundane everyday objects for designs? For example, in the prequels, General Grievous's head. Apparently that was based on a spray nozzle for a bottle.
Right. Well, and that was kind of a fun element of the Star Wars contest, was because that was explicitly one of the tasks was find a mundane object and turn it into a ship.
Yeah.
Just because that was definitely a clear part of their process. But I think for me, maybe I think you're always seeing stuff that's kind of neat, and I know I'll see stuff at like we have the local antique shop is kind of fun to walk around in and just see different stuff that you may not have otherwise found, give you ideas. But I'm not. I think I'm not enough of an industrial designer for that. Like I think there's people that have a certain eye for that kind of thing, whereas like I'm probably more looking at the people who work there and trying to think like what kind of people would work at a place like this, or walking down the street, like what kind of person. What are the features that you'd look for? Just really walking around judging people. Prequels did a lot of new things to the Star Wars look. Definitely did. And would I say that the new Star Wars films are more like fan films than real Star Wars films? No comment. What object did I work with? Oh, for the Star Wars contest? I created a series that was based off of... because for me, I took... Okay, for context, in the Star Wars contest, there was... a race called the Danji that you had to invent, and so it was like kind of open. You could pretty much do whatever you want. But I kind of did a little word scramble on Danji, and I pulled out Jinn, like the origin of genie or demon, and so I kind of went with an Arabian Nights kind of vibe to both the creature design, and then when it came time to do ships, at the antique store, I found a little section that had a hookah and a tea set, and then an oil lamp. And so I took basically the big ship was effectively a hookah, and then the medium ship was a silver teapot, and then the small fighter ship was a classic sort of genie's oil lamp turned upside down.
Cool.
So it was like an evening out on the sand, Arabian Night kind of motif. Flourish Shark. Wow, I had no idea the contest was so specific. Oh yeah, they were thorough. And the man with no screen name says, with the exception of the TIE fighters, Lucas had his sound guys record vintage World War II fighters at air shows for the various ships. Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. Let's check a horizon line in there just for some guidance. So just to speak to the image I'm working on here, I'm really just trying to, like, I'm being specific, but I'm also trying to find some shapes that I'm okay with. That's awesome, and they turned out great. If it fit the Star Wars look, thanks. I'm glad you think so. It's like I said, my mentality was just, relax and make it science fiction-y. So, add a vent here and add some grading there and add some texture here, and it was kind of fun to see that it started to come together. You ended up working with a fire hydrant outside your work. Well, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, it's amazing. Like, you can, I think that is an exercise, is something everybody should try. It's so cool because, I mean, you're solving a design solution, but it's also that that you end up looking around the world in a very specific way.
Yeah, I recently, for an environment that I did, I looked at a lot of sewer grates for like the architecture.
Oh yeah.
And it was kind of like every time I saw a sewer grate, I got added that to my collection.
Nice. That's awesome.
So that, well, they're very tedious to study because of all like the amount of repeating shapes.
Yeah. But it's amazing what that'll teach you, I imagine.
Yeah.
See, here's where, actually, you know what? I need to eat my vegetables and actually really do the thumbnail stage. I think I'm actually working it at too high of a resolution on this. Do I make formal reference sheets for characters and things, or do I keep pulling from previous images in the series? Let me answer that with an image. If anybody's a repeat here, you've seen this before. But this is I have a file that's just full of the layers and layers of changes that these guys have gone through. And so I always kind of know where they're at. This is effectively a glorified just color palette. It just helps me remember kind of what the colors are so I can keep them consistent. But it's also a good just continuity check. Let's see. I wasn't very happy with what I produced, but definitely learned a lot from the experience. Well, yeah, I mean, it was a huge learning experience, and if anything, too, to go through the process was great, just to have them kind of talking through it. Okay, so I have now zoomed out to the point where this is like the actual size that I would probably work at. I don't know if this is going to make for compelling watching.
About that.
But we will see. I'm gonna get a little rougher, and I just deleted the original drawings. So let's see. Very cool. I'll say, okay, so when it comes to making characters with personality, do you usually do the approach that you did in R&D fantasy videos, write their characteristics on the side? Yes, I do. I didn't used to, but actually since doing R&D fantasy and talking a little bit more, like, I've actually really formalized my process. And actually I'm doing it. I've just been doing it at work extensively over the last over the last week in particular. I'm doing a big character push, and it's been very much figure out all of the attributes and character and things that I want to say about them, and then bringing in really simple graphic shapes and colors, and trying to really illustrate the visual soundtrack. Like what is the minimal, almost like graphic design expression, like what you would see, like the cut paper stuff in the Art of Incredibles, if you've ever seen that. Like, can you communicate the character at that low resolution? and only then moving on to like a rough sketch, and only then moving on to something that's a little bit more polished. So it's even more thorough than like the R&D fantasy stuff that I did in terms of just exploration. Okay.
Cool.
Yeah, ask away.
Cool. Okay. Cool. How much research do you do in that regard? Like like finding the attributes and like what you want to express with a
Mm-hmm.
design. How much of that do you do before you put pencil to paper or stylus to monitor?
Good question. Uh, I do. Um, there's no real set answer. It's just as much as it feels necessary to get to that point. Um, in some cases that's like 5 minutes of reading up and talking to somebody. In other cases, it's like I was doing several characters, so it was I spent a couple hours reading through what exists of their descriptions so far, and then talking to our combat designer and finding out what they want to do, and talking to animation and seeing like, okay, what can you really what can you do well right now, and what should we avoid, and really kind of just going through the whole process to try to establish everything, and then at that point writing down my high level notes, and then doing visual soundtrack, and then doing thumbnails, and then and I've got a question here that says, that work you were talking about wouldn't happen to be Dragon Age 4 now, would it? I can't talk about this sort of thing. Any project that's unannounced, I can't talk about. Okay, I keep trying to solve actual architecture instead of just thinking composition. So, one more back as punishment. Even one more. Okay, there we go. I have to get even smaller.
So, what were you referring to about like high level notes? Are those like the most like so what constitutes like a high level note and a low level note?
Well, I would say the broadest descriptions, like what is absolutely essential to this character. Like if you could let's go with something innocuous, and we'll take Han Solo, and we'll say, can you describe Han Solo in 5 words? And if you can figure out what you want those 5 words to be, it really forces you to get the team to make decisions as far as like what their priorities are.
Yeah.
But it also really, it's you can communicate those, and then if you want to get more granular, that's fine. But as long as you have a place to start like that, it really does wonders. So once you have that, then I think it's that's the highest level. And then eventually, once you're at a higher resolution of the drawing, I think then it's okay to get to a higher resolution with the information you're working with. It's almost like working with an idea sketch in that sense, or an idea thumbnail. Let's see. Interesting method. I'm going to have to steal it. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Steal it. Sorry, Matt. I love Dragon Age Inquisition, not just as a fan, but also as an artist. You and the rest of your team did an amazing job. Well, thank you very much. Yeah, I'm really proud of that project. So, Han Solo in 5 words. No good scruffy nerf herder. See, there you go. You can draw that. See, le sobriquet Solo, leather vest, high boots, gun. See, that wouldn't give it. You can see, it's got to be story. It's got not physical description, but like, what do you want the audience to respond? How do you want them to feel? Dude, really excited to catch your live stream. It's 4:30 a.m. here. Oh my goodness. Bravo. Trying to be very quiet so I don't wake them. It's same for you too. Good heavens. You guys are insane. Work has really helped validate my love of line art and how much it can do. Oh, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, it's if I can fight for line art, then that works for me. I'm happy with that. let's see. Like Han Solo, for example. If anyone's, I'll just keep bringing up Red Letter Media because I've watched countless hours of it. But in their way back in their prequel critique videos, they ask some of their friends to describe Star Wars characters without physical description or without talking about their job. And so, it's like they're saying describe Han Solo, and they'll say, he's arrogant, he's dashing, he's adventurous, he's a roguish, and so describing those you can work with. Those are the descriptors that I'm talking about. Or like Rich Evans talking about C-3PO and saying like he's prissy and he's very uptight, and like, yeah, we get it. C-3PO, of course.
Is he so stiff?
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah, stiff would be, well, and that's a good one too, is like stiff in attitude, so that gives you pose, but stiff even just in terms of like how you design his, I'll call it exoskeleton, his shell, that can inform it too, so it's saying something about his character but also his appearance, and I think when the two are inseparable, that's when you've really got something awesome. Dry White Snowflake says, maybe this is a basic question, but did you ever take that sort of kit bashing approach when designing a character or culture? For instance, combining elements of various real world cultures, etc., to make a new one. All the time. It totally works. It's a great way to go. Yeah, it's I can't even remember who said it. I can't remember where I picked this up, but the idea that like culture, like there's no culture in a vacuum, basically. That's kind of like what culture is it's like a constant mix of people and experiences. And so the process of designing a culture, you kind of have to go through the same process that every culture goes through anyway, where it's experience, like figuring out, okay, what is important to these people, and how would how would they use these symbols, and what would they say about this, and if you can especially know what kind of story you're trying to tell, then you can be very specific about what kind of references you're drawing from. And so it's on the artist as well to become as educated as possible so that they know what dials to turn. Because like an example that I used when I was last in Montreal talking about stuff like this was, let's say you had like you're trying to design the artifacts for a burial ritual. Well, if you know things just about different burial rituals and the circumstances that they're in, like we're familiar with, burning or cremation or that kind of thing, but in a place like, let's say, I'm pretty sure it's like Mongolia, where you don't have a lot of access to fuel necessarily. Like fuel is expensive or rare, difficult to get to. There aren't a lot of trees everywhere, and I'm talking like high altitude Mongolia, and the ground is frozen for most of the year, if not rocky and difficult to dig in. So you get something like the sky burial, which, if you're familiar with it, is effectively taking a body up onto a hillside, cutting it into little pieces, and letting the scavengers come.
Yeah, that's what they do in the Himalayas as well.
Yeah, that's okay. That's what that must be what I'm thinking. So here I'm talking about reference and research, and I can't remember the names of these things. But it's effectively like it's a ritual born out of physical necessity in a lot of ways, and in some cases it's learning about what came first. The physical necessity, and then some of the rituals and myths around that, or And so if you can, then because you can take that to your story or to your illustration and say, okay, well, I know that these people live in a very, harsh environment. So if I'm going to design a burial ritual for them, what would it be? And it doesn't even have to be, a repeat of it, but it's just saying, well, these people live on a lava planet, and lava is very important to them, so the burial ritual, hint, probably involves lava in some way. Just even that, like, realization that the stuff around, it's all a product of our environment, the world around us. I don't know what I'm trying to say. Hopefully you get it.
Yeah, very interesting points.
So yes, kit bashing of all kinds, I think, is awesome. Or like Terrell Whitlatch talks about creature design because she's incredible at it and has a incredible career of doing it, and is such a natural history buff, just unbelievably knowledgeable. And it's cool seeing, like, in her books and to hear her talk about the different kinds of creature design, and one of them, the really fun kind of, that's chimera, where it's it's just kind of like the taking two or more parts of an animal and just mashing them together, like not a hybrid but a chimera. So it's like a griffin, where it's like an eagle head on a lion body with eagle wings, or a minotaur, where it's just like a bull's head on a man's body. So in that case, it's like definitely coming up with different creatures through kit bashing.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I believe that ritual also supposed to mean that giving your body back to nature. Exactly. Yeah. Which is also, and that's within, burial is very much the same, and cremation is very much the same. It's, returning to ash or returning to dust. It's just that if you happen to live in a place where fuel is expensive and the ground is inscrutable, then you find a way. Artifact says she's fantastic. Yeah, Terrell Whitlatch is, man, what a delight. It's so funny because her demeanor, the way she speaks, she's so gentle and so soft and so very kind, and you just feel like you're just so relaxed talking to her. And then she puts up something that she drew, and it's like the floor starts to rumble, and you're like, oh my goodness, that's incredible. How did you do this? It's like the most unassuming badass in the room. Okay, so I'm like, yeah, all right. So thumbnail, I kind of just wanted to circle. I just wanted to compositionally put a circle here. And thankfully, in my previous image, I had established something of a language for that. So it's kind of like a reframing. I'm going to be kind of redrawing, but I effectively had this big circle and this dome. So I'm kind of fudging it, and I'm bringing them together to create something that should work. So that will actually be probably my pencil layer for the background. Let's see. Just as a reminder, what I'm going to do, if anyone still wants to jump into the Discord and actually ask any questions by voice, it is definitely a little easier for me to just talk instead of read. Plus, I think it makes the videos a little bit more enjoyable to watch. I've been getting that feedback from people watching them. It just kind of, it makes it easier to put on in the background. Plus, it feels more like a hangout than just some guy sitting in his basement talking into the dark. So at this point, I'm actually kind of glad that we're going through this because I feel like I haven't gotten to go through this specific process on a stream yet. And so what I'm doing really is I've got my line of these the thumbnails kind of gave me my line of action. So I've got these two lines here. So these really are the line of action that I'm going to be going with. And now it's just a matter of like I'm fond of repeating. Samantha Youssef put it so well that the line of action is the story, and everything else is just the grammar. So with that line of action, we have pose and character. The story is being told, and now it's a matter of executing it. So I'm going to be basically now hanging the rest of the anatomy off of this, and I'm going to construct these characters. Now, the handy thing that I personally have found about this technique, and I talked about this in my ACAD talk, so forgive me for anyone who's seen that already. It was one of my childhood goals, or one of my young artist goals. Maybe not childhood, maybe like art school. That I kept getting. I would get kind of frustrated by the reference gathering experience. I could never exactly find what I was looking for, and it was trying to get people to pose properly, and I can't do it myself. And I always thought it would be so great to be so confident with anatomy that I could just make it all up and just draw from scratch and just not have to worry about that. And I used to imagine that if I worked hard enough, I could do that. Naive me, back in the day, I had no idea, and thankfully I learned eventually that would never actually, I never say never, but while that may not happen, something like it could. It just meant that, not that I could just do it for free, but that the only way to be able to do it is to keep up life drawing and anatomy study constantly in the background. So I go through this process with my figures, especially in Tellurion, of construction. And it's very much like building the body up from scratch, layer by layer by layer. I'm no Kim Jong-ji. I have to... going through this process, I find helps me keep it all straight, keep it communicating. But I'm also trying on a regular basis. Like, I will go through this construction process with figure drawing. So I'll look up some reference, whether it's like, some life drawing models, or like just, people in costumes, or whatever it ends up being. And I find that helps keep me fairly grounded, because it's like, I don't mind saying over and over again, this is not like riding a bike at all. It goes away. You do lose it, and so it's awesome to just keep sharpening the axe, because it's just going to keep getting more dull, or it's just going to keep getting dull. So you just have to keep going back and sharpening it. And now in these early stages, I do flip back and forth a lot. I just find it helps for later, so there aren't huge surprises. I've finished my whole inking stage, and I flip it and I go, oh no, I gotta do it all over. So if I'm flipping back and forth as I build it up, then I find there are less surprises along the way.
Cool. So in your ACAD talk, you mentioned that you follow a lot of blogs that might help make your concepts more grounded.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, machining, carpentry.
Yes.
Stuff like that. So like, do you like visit them on like a regular basis to try and like further extrapolate like stuff?
Yeah, well, I mean, thankfully now too, we live in the Instagram sort of era, so it's kind of easier to get the stuff sort of delivered to you. Like, I think a lot of it is usually either my Pinterest or Instagram, or it's just like subscribing, like I said, casting a really wide net, um, and just seeing the
Mm-hmm.
kinds of things that people are working on. Um, so that, yeah, you're just kind of getting this constant feed of surprising or interesting or educational or sometimes excruciatingly boring stuff. Um,
Yeah.
and it's especially, I think I really do think it's good to to follow stuff that you have next to no interest in whatsoever as well.
Right.
Like I follow a few um, sewing specific Instagram accounts. Could not care less, but I have actually learned quite a bit, and it's like,
Right.
and it's neat to see what they think of as important, and I mean to see what people who are hyper like through their life is about sewing, to see the things that they would call out as being funny or their even like their jokes. Every little subculture has their specific jokes. Like even being a little bit privy to that helps give you more of an insight on even the mentality of this stuff.
Yeah. Well, regarding sewing, I kind of saw as well as that like something that like would be something to research. At one point, I was considering like buying a sewing machine and doing actual sewing so that like I can get a better idea of like how drapery would work. But I figured eventually that would be a bit much.
Well, I mean, that's it would be a very handy skill to have. Your pants
Yeah.
and shirts and all that stuff would probably last twice as long. Um,
Mhm.
but it's interesting too. We know there's have you ever heard of Marvelous Designer?
Yes.
Okay.
The simulation, the cloth
Yes.
simulation.
Yes. That you can't really use effectively unless you know how to pattern actual garments.
Right.
So sewing knowledge is actually becoming relevant again to artists. Like what used to be the costume department in film effectively falls on concept art in games until eventually, who knows, maybe video game costume departments become a thing. Um, so yeah, it's I as a hobby, I think there are worse things you could get into.
She looks very taken aback.
Awesome. This stage, I spend a lot of the pencil stage is when most I think most of the wrestling with expression really comes in.
Hmm.
Let's see. Do I have specific concept artists just concentrating on costume design? Usually not. Um, we do have some, like there are some people who are maybe everybody has strengths, and there are for sure people who have a knack for interesting fashion or creating cool outfits, or maybe they just have that kind of a niche. And some people are much stronger at environments, so you tend to try to give them that. But usually, a concept artist, at least in my experience, will do just about everything eventually. I know I'll go into fabric stores and touch the fabric types there. Yeah, they can really help. Yeah. Tad's art. Thought I missed the stream. Well, it looks like you made it. How they lay, drape, and fold. Yeah, understanding the materials, like the behavior of the materials, is actually that would be a very very useful thing. Sounds like it would be useful for texture as well. Heck, I could see as an art school project, collecting, I mean, you don't even need to go to a fabric store for this, but doing a lineup of denim and cotton and leather and all these different materials just like hung over a chair, and then do a nice long extensive study. And I mean, oh man, I'm getting excited just thinking about it. But I mean, I dare you to do that exercise and not walk away knowing something intimately.
So, did you do a lot of that at ACAD, like that kind of stuff?
I wouldn't. I don't know if it's fair to say a lot, but it was definitely a part of the education. Like we would do, like the classic still life with flat white geometric shapes. Egg rendering and drapery and all that kind of stuff. So it definitely was like a classical art education in that sense.
Did you do it all traditionally?
Yeah, at that stage for sure.
So would you say that, like, at least when you're studying the fundamentals, it's probably that's like the way to go, like, or
Compared to digital?
yeah,
I can't say that. I can't make a call on better or worse, because I think, like, I just started, I was doing digital at home anyway while I was in school. Like, I just kind of grew up doing digital stuff. And so I was really familiar with it. And I didn't actually really start submitting digital work until maybe my third year.
yeah.
So it was still a pretty traditional education, but I was still actually learning the digital stuff on the side, on the forums and stuff. I don't think there's, I think as long as you're learning the stuff, it's good. Like if you're doing the rendering, I don't think there's necessary. I'm not one of those people who really believes that there's some sort of special magic in traditional that's not in, because every single new medium has been like, back when it was just egg white paints, it's like, have you seen these oil paints? It's disgusting. That's not real. It's a fake medium, and it's not going to last. And then acrylic paints come out, and it's like, have you seen these acrylic plastic painters? That's not real. That medium's going to die. It's so stupid. Like, there's every medium has the people who say like, no, that's not real art. So digital's no different. It's just people making more art. It's just that the paint is numbers on a glowing screen instead of pigment on a canvas. But the emotion's there.
Right.
The story's there. So shut up. That is a terrible hand. Oh my goodness. Doesn't even matter that it's a sketch layer.
Which hand is it? Is that a right? Oh, right, that's a right hand, so I guess you can't reference that.
At this orientation. I totally could. And I totally will. But I'm just gonna... But it's more of it's a shape problem. It had no structure to it. So I'm gonna pause my sketches every now and then while I take a quick peek. I'm just gonna try to get. It was almost hard to do this because I picked up Mignola's, the first two trade paperbacks of Hellboy and Hell, and I read through them today. And looking at Mignola's work and then trying to go and actually do your own again, it's just like, oh, but I'm okay. I'll try. Let's see, like acrylic gouache. Yeah, it has a really neat look. Do I have a mirror on my desk for referencing expressions in hands? Yes, I do. Unfortunately, it's huge. So I can't really move it. And I haven't actually. I kind of reoriented my desk for the sake of streaming. So if I really want to, I have to turn all the way over there. Okay. Shenanigans. Now that hand. That's not the right expression. There is also the webcam option, that's for sure. I mean, thankfully, this is hand reference usually, unless it's a really specifically. I mean, yeah, foreground. I mean, that works, but I think I need to trust my sketch a little bit more. No. Zoom out.
Oh, so for the course that I'm going into, the like the primary body of work is finished pieces, like assignment work. So like might be thumbnails for like a particular setting, or like basically pretty much finished pieces from what I gathered. But
Okay.
and like you're kind of left to study the fundamentals in your own time. But at ACAD, was it kind of like inverted in the sense that your primary like day-to-day stuff was fundamentals, and like you were kind of left to do finished pieces in your own time?
I would say yes, especially for the first I guess 3 years. So first year, the first year is just fundamentals. Like that's all you're doing. If you want to do design, great. If you make it through fundamentals, you get to do it in second year. And then the second year is the fundamentals of design. So like we're doing design stuff, doing typography lessons and stuff like that. But it was all paper, like cut paper. Like there was no computer stuff allowed in second year. So it was, again, it's the fundamentals of design. Like if you can't figure out this this layout or this font, like do this font sheet or do this like typography exercise in cut paper, why would we let you touch a computer? You haven't learned to respect it yet. So by third year, we were allowed to use computers, and we really had more of a focus on like, okay, here's actually the kind of assignment that here's a real world example. Like we're going to do a magazine layout. Okay, cool. Like layout an interior for a magazine in InDesign. So then it became a little bit more practical. Or not practical. I mean, like then it became more about like a legitimately finished work. Like you're trying to create something that looks like you could actually print it out.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, that's one of the things that I really actually liked about it. And one of the reasons why I still speak highly of it was their focus on fundamentals. I think like in games, and I know programs are getting a little bit more sophisticated about this, but I historically have been really dubious about games specific education.
Yeah.
Because usually I would rather it's not that hard to teach someone how to use a 3D program. But to teach them how to think and how to design, like that's to go through the real stuff of it, that's the hard part. And so I would way rather hire someone that just has that understanding and teach them the details than to have to go the other way, personally.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Okay, this anatomy is falling apart on her a little bit. I actually like the hands now. Let's see. Hellboy and Hell was amazing. Yeah, when you see the work of other artists, how much of it affects you and how much of it do you try to bring into your own art? That's a good question. I guess it depends on how much, what kind of effect it has. Like, because I think there's all kinds. Like I've said before, like Mignola, really I would list him as a huge inspiration. Even though I wouldn't say I draw like in that whatever that thing he's doing so well is, his Mignola-ness. But I do really admire his sense of graphic design and his efficiency and his I say this in a loving way. His almost borderline stubbornness at just drawing material that he wants to draw, it's awesome. And that actually really helped inspire me to just do Tellurion. It's like, why don't I just draw the stuff I want to draw? Then I'll actually draw it. It won't be punishment. I won't be having to look up mailbox reference just to be gritty and grounded or whatever it is. But then, like, for example, I've always loved Mobius. And one of the things that I love about his comic work especially was that, he really leads with line, and that color, it plays beautiful support. But line definitely leads. And so I wanted to kind of emulate that with how I made up Tellurion images where line is at the forefront, and I never go so dark with any other fill colors, so it can kind of, the line is always doing the heavy lifting. So in that case, it's like definitely inspired by Mobius, but it's not like trying to draw, like Arzak style flying birds and people with tall helmets made of leather and deserts and all that great stuff, floating crystals. Programs change so quickly too. It's true, yeah. Also, his stubbornness of not drawing feet. Yeah. Well, and that's one thing I really admire about Mignola too, is his like how he works so well with like resolution. Oh, thanks for coming in, Flora Shark. He it's like he operates at a very low resolution, but he says things very clearly at that resolution. So it's cool. It's almost like you can tell, even at his line work stage, there's a even in these super crisp, ultra designed lines, there's a blurring that's taking place. Like you get those, especially when like a figure's small and they've kind of gotten to the point where their hands and feet have disappeared. It's like the bloom. It's like when the bloom has expanded and has started to reduce details. The most obvious example of that would be that I can think of would be like in film, like in the movie AI, when the kid first shows up and he kind of looks like those, spoiler alert, looks like the robot alien things at the end with the narrow neck and the tall head. It's like Mignola's doing that, but with ink. Okay, that's a little better.
Oh, so you mentioned, I think, like in a few of your like study things, you've drawn like cosplayers.
Yes.
Do you ever draw cosplayers that are cosplaying as characters that you've designed?
No, I haven't. Oh no, actually, that's not true. I have. Yes, I have. That's true. I just realized there's probably been more cases like this, but I know for a fact that I have drawn at least one Isabella.
Yeah.
For sure, but I'm sure there's more. Yeah, I've said before, and I could maybe articulate this for people. Like, they have been a really interesting resource that I never anticipated. Because first and foremost, they're very enthusiastic. Obviously, they spend a huge amount of money to do what they do, and a huge time investment. But they're also a great resource for just, it's like being able to actually ask the characters, like, where is this costume working and where is this not working? To be able to actually say, and the example I always go to is like when I first went to PAX and I met, really the first time I'd met cosplayers in real life, and there were a whole bunch of shepherds, but they were all standing in the back row. And it was like, when I went and asked them about it, turns out that the way the armor was designed, they couldn't sit in it.
Oh.
And I was like, I see. Okay. So All right, that's good to know. And so, for future armors and stuff like that, more and more and more, and it's one of the reasons why you try to do thorough research is because it helps you design better.
Right.
Because if something has become a real costume or a suit of armor, it has endured the gauntlet of exposure to the practical world and all of its requirements.
Yeah.
But in the video game sense, like we're trying some new stuff, we're trying different things, and it just really helps to get a sense for, okay, we see what works, what doesn't. Another example I really like is my art director on Inquisition. In talking to the cosplayers, one thing that he found in his chats with them was that a few of them were really wishing that they had somewhere lore friendly where they could that actually maintained the integrity of the costume, because for them, like, anything extra or added on, they're trying to go for as much authenticity as possible.
Mhm.
So they were really asking for legitimate places that they could keep their cell phones and their badges and all that sort of stuff. And so it became this kind of like mutually beneficial arrangement where on some costumes that we legitimately designed for Dragon Age, we would say, he would sometimes say, like, okay, can you put a cell phone pocket on there? And it sounds kind of crass, but it's also it's a reminder of the practical in an in-world believability sense. Like, it actually just straight up made us better designers, because if this were a real costume, like, every human has stuff. Like, we all have stuff that we carry around with us. And so to have, containers for things, or like everything had to be, and this was my own personal rule. It was like everything had to have as close as possible to a real fastener on it as possible. Like, there were no magic seams. Like, there had to be a buckle or a string or like, it just no more hiding.
Mhm.
And so a part of that too, it actually helped us. I mean, before learning about the transition to Marvelous Designer, we had some cosplayers give us some great tips and things to start looking into as far as just when designing costumes in certain ways. It was actually the girl dressed as Isabella, Allegra Clark, who, and I think I maybe mentioned this in the Egghead talk, I can't remember, but she confronted me dressed as Isabella, I believe. Was it Isabella or maybe one of the Asari? But in costume, came up and said, like, we need to talk about darting. I was like, all right, sure, what's that? And it turns out it's the act of, like, cutting fabric and then sewing it and taking out a piece, like a triangular piece, and then sewing it together again. And that's the way you can legitimately, like a tightly fit woman's shirt. And that was the example she used. You want to have a curve or a cup around the breast. You can't do that with just flat fabric. You're going to get weird folds. So darting, you will see these, like, little hemlines, or these little seams, just a little line, and that allows you to get the curve. And so when designing a character, you can, if you're aware of those techniques and what you can do to solve any number of problems, you can put that stuff in. It makes it feel more grounded, but then it's also that much more constructible if people are so inclined. And then everybody wins, so why not? Marmaris says, "Oh, that's great. It's actually one of the things I try to remember when designing characters. Would I be able to sew this, or sometimes even with the culture that the character's from, be able to sew this?" Yeah, and I have my own, my specific ritual is the getting dressed with this character mental exercise that I go through. And, like, sometimes you're just trying to design something really awesome, and it's like it's totally appropriate to just go nuts. But in cases where I'm trying to go really grounded and practical, I really do try to almost, like, walk through, like, visualize the getting dressed ritual that this character would go through. And, like, would a reasonable person put this on? Would they go through the effort of doing this? How would they do it? And would they? And like actually one example where I think it worked in a way that surprised me. This is a little bit of a tangent, but it was born out of partly that, and then eventually bumping up against technical limitations. Was back on Dragon Age 2. One of the appearances for the character Anders was meant to be kind of a lighter, more mage-like warden-influenced outfit, and we had given him this kind of trench coat. But it turns out the animators couldn't do a trench coat that wrapped around his hips to the front. If we had fabric, it had to be It had to be on the back. But the thing was, we didn't want to just design a piece of fabric that just hung off of the back. That just seemed artificial, or it didn't work with the outfit. But if you imagined you were Anders and you were told, okay, your trench coat has to hang off from just the back. Well, it's a trench coat. It's fabric. You can do whatever you need. So we took it and almost like imagined if he bunched it up and then tucked it into his belt at this angle and then just drew how the folds would fall and all that sort of stuff. So it is still that trench coat. And if you were to create it and you're a cosplayer, you could happily, or like if we ever wanted to, if we ever got the tech to show it the way we wanted, we could just untuck it and let it hang out.
Oh, okay. So you didn't actually have to change the actual garment.
So the garment design remained the same, but how it was worn was different and fit the technical requirements. So in cases like that, going through the getting dressed ritual actually can really help solve issues in some neat ways.
So like you don't have to go back to the drawing board in terms of the like you don't have to scrap a design.
Yeah, exactly.
The drawing board
Yeah.
Of the, like you don't have to scrap a design.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh, I'm doubling up here. There we go. I'm just gonna see if I can find. Oh, have we still got Discord?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. All right. I opened a new tab and then it's unmuted me.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to do a quick search to see if I could find that appearance just for the object lesson, or for the. Did we actually release that here, or was that? Oh. Sometimes, it's funny, just the evolution of how these things work. Sometimes you don't know if something actually came out when it was intended, or if it had to get folded over into something later. Because I think it may have not actually even made it to Anders. It might have... Oh. We may have turned it into a mage robe. Did we? This is where I need a second monitor. Oh wait, Anders concept art. That's gonna drive me nuts. All right. Well, maybe I'll hunt that down and make it another part of another talk.
Okay.
That's too bad.
Yeah. So wait. So he doesn't. So like, did that change somewhere along the line?
It could have. I can't. I'm doing searches for it. I'm not seeing him in it. So I can't remember if it ended up being like a DLC release, like we weren't able to get it done in time, or if it ended up getting folded into the warden appearance for Inquisition, because it was effectively just a warden outfit. It was trying to give him something that reflected that aspect of his history.
Mm-hmm.
What character was the trench coat? Yeah, Anders. Do I have a go-to or favorite kind of lighting scheme or mood? Um, honestly, no. I think just anything that is going to tell the story and look good doing it, which I think it's totally context based. The description reminds me of the Grey Warden mage uniform from Inquisition. Yeah, it might have actually. That's what I'm thinking. It may have been actually folded in with Inquisition mages. Who do I side with, Anders or Sebastian? But in my understanding, this issue can be kind of controversial for some people, which always baffled me because I stabbed Anders so hard. I was like, why would there even be a conversation? Like, Sebastian, of course, yeah, Sebastian is right, of course. So that was my direction. I know some people see it differently. That's fine. Sometimes I struggle with the awesomeness in fantasy settings because of some years in HEMA historical reenactment, and my brain just goes, this isn't how this stuff works. This armor clothing doesn't make sense. Yeah, well, absolutely. Yeah. Knowing, the more you know, the more frustrating it gets. And you kind of need to pick which direction you're going to go. And like embrace it and see if you can go even more nuts, or try to find a way to make it interesting. Because I mean, there's a certain point at which it's like, is this fun anymore? I don't know. Hey, all right, lots of Anders stabbers. I'm glad we've all come together. My wife saved Anders just because he was a romance option. Well, Sebastian was kind of a romance option too. Come on. Wasn't he? I don't remember. Okay, gonna just bring my...
So what challenges arise from working with a team?
Yeah, lots. I feel like that can be the name of a club, the Anders Stabbers. I like that. We're working in a team. Good question. Well, it's definitely, there's a lot more voices. There's a lot more. The cool thing is there's a lot more kinds of expertise. Like, it's actually really neat to be able to work with writers and animators and programmers, and just, they have all the sorts of different insights and ways of looking at things that I would never have access to otherwise. So that's really awesome. Oftentimes when you think you're stuck, you realize, like, a writer can come in and say, oh, that's no problem. We just changed that word to this word and it works. Oh, neat. Or, a programmer says, oh, you're being too careful. We can actually have like 100 people on screen at the same time now. And like, well, that's awesome. Let's do that. So it has its advantages there. It does mean that, every piece of concept art is an attempt at solving a problem that has 10 different axes rather than just, however many you would if you were just drawing something for yourself. Or if you just had one client who just wanted an illustration of one thing. It's like, okay, well, did you tell the story? Yes. Mission accomplished. Here's your money. Versus, this has to work. This has to be animatable, and it has to tell the story, and it has to work with design. It has to do blah, 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 blah. There's so many different things to go through.
Like, it's under a lot more scrutiny.
Yeah. A lot more scrutiny, a lot more voices involved. But at the same time, it's really cool because you pretty much every time you end up with something kind of more impressive than you could ever make on your own. Like I've said many times, and it's still true, and I still find it amazing. Every time I see a character in game on screen, just standing there, it's magic. It's because, like, they're standing there breathing and they're looking around, and when you press forward on the stick, they start walking, and it's like, they actually came to life. Especially when the animation's in there and the voice acting is in, and you're just like, this is crazy. It's just really neat. It's really neat. So I think there's the challenge of a whole bunch of people have a whole bunch of ideas and restrictions and things we can and can't do, but at the same time you end up with something huge.
Yeah.
Let's see. That's what we should call this stream from now on, the Anderstabbers. We need jackets. Oh, there you go. The first round of merchandise. I bet EA Legal would have a field day trying to parse that. Let's see. That was my reaction to my first Inquisitor.
Oh, will you be doing any critiques on the Discord?
Oh yeah, let's see. What time are we at? 10:30. Well, if we are, we should probably do it sooner rather than later. I think given the timeline, because I think I was enjoying, I was getting all stream happy setting it up, but I think it is way more sustainable for me to actually keep it to one stream a week.
Okay.
And so that said, the next time I stream, in all likelihood, this might be a similar situation as tonight's, where I've actually done, finished a couple more images, depending on how the week goes. And I guess that's fine. So I'm just trying to talk it out for myself.
Oh yeah, it's fine.
Let's see. Oh, do you do critiques? Sometimes. Yeah. Tad's art. I still miss the wardens from Origins. Yep, we get that a lot. I did some... No, I won't say that. It's fun being a concept artist, because if you have a crazy idea or you want to do something, you want to communicate an idea that's either egregious or hilarious or whatever, you can just do it pretty quickly. And so
like the main role of a concept artist, like in the studio setting.
Oh yeah, it's especially taking those great ideas that are come from, well, let's say at BioWare there just happened to be a whole group of Anderstabbers having a conversation, and we kept joking, and eventually a drawing gets made, and maybe it doesn't go anywhere, but you post it online, and it can be kind of fun. So there are some that have been posted and some that haven't. Just exploring. None of it's real. And I like to tell people who get, because I mean it's the internet, and people are going to get violently upset about anything. That especially with concept art, it's like, you know what? If it's not in the final game, it's not real. Don't worry about it. If it's not actually in the game, it didn't happen. From a concept art perspective.
Is there a lot of your designs that are on like the cutting room floor? Because
tons, tons
are like doomed to never be seen, because like they might be used for something, but like it further down the line.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's like, we have I don't think this is saying too much. There's a creature folder that's been around since Origins, that every project has used. Like it's almost kind of become this repository for all of the. It's like the Island of Misfit Toys, but for creature design. And so all sorts of crazy, wacky ideas that have kind of at some point we've had to say, okay, not for this project. But you throw them in there, and every project, it is absolutely worth going through and saying like, all right, Island of Misfit Creatures, anybody relevant again?
Yeah.
And a few of them have actually come around, like, so it's been kind of cool. So yeah, we definitely keep stuff around.
Mhm.
Let's see. So I'm saying there was a chance. Well, no, okay. What I'm actually saying is that given my access to Dragon Age writers and people who like to have those conversations and joke around about things, um, wardens have been drawn, um, but will probably never in in various levels of uh, in various conditions, a range that would garner a range of a wide array of fan reactions. I don't know. How cryptic can I be?
That was very carefully worded.
But there's tons of drawings about all sorts of stuff, that so many stupid ideas or great ideas that don't work, or it's endless. If it well, and that was part of years ago. Years ago I did a post on my blog that ended up getting passed around a little bit. That was a whole bunch of Mass Effect and Dragon Age concepts from the cutting room floor.
Like sorry for interrupting, but it's like you had one post where it was like, oh, this is really crap. Just imagine the deafening sound of all those human foot squeaking against the
Oh yeah,
glass.
exactly. Yes, yeah, that's the one. Exactly. So it's it's stuff like that where it's like it's quick and dirty and it got an idea across, but it's not what we want to do, and there's just like mountains of it, and it's most of it is just it's so terrible you wouldn't even want to put it in an art book, but it helped. It helped somehow. Let's see. How you ever ended up using a design that was originally scrapped, used later on another project. I'm trying to think of an example. If I think of one that's really clear cut, I will use one. I'll bring one up for sure. But let's see. And then, wow, you really stepped around that one. Yeah, I'm trying. Let's see here. So at this point, you've seen me just go through it with with the boy, and I'm about to start doing it with the girl once I get this knife figured out. But once the anatomy's done, then I can go in and draw the clothing on top. And I just find that again that process helps, like sorting out all the drapery and figuring that out. So this is just the process, like I said, starting from the really simple skeleton and just going layer after layer after layer, from like bones to the muscle skin layer to drapery. Let's see. Do I like Destiny's designs? I like the fashion and stuff. I am moderately familiar with Destiny design. Like I paid a lot of attention to it when it was first kind of like on its way. Mostly because of Jamie Jones's incredible concept work. A lot of the stuff that was coming out from the team. The game that came out was very different than what the marketing material had kind of led me to believe it was. So I didn't actually continue following it along very much. It's just not the kind of game that I'm able to really sink my teeth into in the way that I may once have been able to. But yeah, I mean, the stuff, some of the stuff that I've seen for it looks pretty slick and cool. I don't know. I don't know enough about the story, and I'm not familiar with enough of the designs to speak to how it might, if I have any opinions on whether it like fits with, whether the visuals are telling the story. But it's Bungie, so I'm willing to bet there's some good thought process behind there. But man alive, Jamie Jones's paintings for that. It would be awesome just to like give those to another team and just like make a different kind of game out of this, and just to see what would happen. Like not because Destiny is bad, but just to see what you'd get out of it, because it's still really really amazing. Crow's Tune says, I think some of the stuff from DA2 expansion made it into Inquisition. Oh, a ton. Yes, absolutely. And that was actually one of the best things about working on Inquisition was we were doing an expansion to Dragon Age 2 called Exodus. And in the midst of that, we made the final call to switch to the Frostbite engine. It was going to be, we were going to have to bite that bullet eventually. Our engine was kind of on its dying gasps. And so we switched to the Frostbite engine and chose that as an opportunity to take what we had begun to develop for Exodus and fold it into a whole new game. And so a lot of what Inquisition was what that expansion was going to be. And it actually was great because for the concept art team, because for us, everything we had designed for that, I think probably 6 months or so, maybe a little less, but about 6 months that we had been working on that, it was all still relevant. And so that actually bought us this huge bout of extra time that let us, and I talk about this in the ACAD video, that it gave us a chance to indulge in kind of the Dragon Age art history a little bit more and kind of expand on that and get things feeling even more kind of grounded and believable. So that was a really special time. What Destiny as a game does not deliver on the art and setting it promises, sadly. And that can be said for a lot. Truth be told, that quick and rough sketches is what I enjoy most. The more production stuff an art book has, the better. Yeah, I think I'm the same way. I think too, especially if it's stuff that tells the story, and it really also shows the thought process. I'm a big fan of that. There are some art books that are a little bit more like that I've seen that are almost like a visual catalog of assets, and that doesn't really appeal to me. At one point, there was some DAI concept art shown, and it had clearly taken some influence from Dark Souls. Possibly, if you can think of what specifically it was. There's all sorts of stuff out there. I mean, part of it too, there are some people who are big fans of Dark Souls on the team for sure. At the same time, working in fantasy and all this, it's there's kind of some overlap is unavoidable, but I'm a big fan of like what the Dark Souls team has been able to do. I just have a huge admiration for a lot of their stuff. So let's see. I think we've got some pencils now. Just gonna cut some of this out. Let's see here.
Oh, how much bearing did your research into like the Renaissance area have on the like artistic vision of Dragon Age Inquisition?
It helped a lot. We used the Northern Renaissance as our main sort of guidepost, or our touchstone, if you want to put it that way. And so a lot of the visual language from that really played into it. Yeah, it's kind of hard to say because there was like in-world art, but then we also did the language for the cards was partly in reference to that. The sort of overall design language was in part inspired by it. A lot of color palettes were inspired by it. So yeah, the Northern Renaissance was one of our major reference points.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really helps to have that kind of thing too, where it's something grounded, um, that also is not too, like you don't want to reference other concept art. You want to try to go back or go to a source that's a little deeper or a little more raw. Let's see. How are deadlines when working in a studio? They vary, but they're also very self-guided. So you are responsible for helping to figure out, what you think you can deliver. That kind of thing. Now let's see. This is his right shoulder. His right shoulder. Okay. Yeah. So you're largely responsible for helping to figure out what it is that you think you can deliver, and I think that makes a big difference. So if you think we've got a certain amount of time and a certain amount of stuff and all that sort of thing, so that can really help. So if you feel like if you're slipping or you're maybe going to miss a deadline or something, that's kind of on you largely. I mean, sometimes there's extenuating circumstances, but yeah. Let's see. The man with no screen name. Despite the well of inspiration being reasonably deep, everyone is still drawing, pardon the pun, from the same well. Well, yeah, and it's like I'm just gonna keep quoting Milton Glaser. I don't want to be original. I just want to be good. There are just, especially with storytelling, there are just archetypes that work because they mean something to us. Like, they did not form out of nothing. They are important, and they say something about us on a deeper level. So even if you're playing some silly game about punching dragons in the face, like on a story level, archetype level, and just the idea of like what stories are and what they represent, something's happening. And that pool is only so deep, but that's kind of a good thing. Like we tell these stories over and over again, and we go to these archetypes over and over again because they're us, if that makes sense. Finished the redesign of my character. You did some draw or design. Oh, cool. Been struggling with it for ages, but I'm really happy after getting your feedback. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I heard you say that DII is the project you're the most proud, where everything clicked perfectly. What do I think happened in that process that made it such a good experience for me? A number of things. Inquisition was a project where the team had really been through a lot together. They trusted each other, and so having that trust was a massive thing. When you're able to when your leads trust you and you trust your leads, and everybody can say, all right, let's do this thing together. That makes a huge difference. We also had, it was the third game in a series. So at that point, you're familiar enough with the material, but you're also able to try some new things. And so it was really fun clay to work with. And then two, we had a concept art team that largely was able to stick very closely together. Like, we were in the same room for most of the project. And with that, you just get this tremendous creative atmosphere that's like competitive in a healthy way, and really bolstering and encouraging, and filled with critiques and yeah, that healthy competition and all that stuff. So it just had a really great vibe. And yeah, just every game comes out that you're working on, or in the early stages, you have this vision in your mind of what it could be, and it's like the most ideal vision before it actually meets reality. And it's like, most games that I've worked on, the final product compared to what you really had in your mind, it's maybe like 15%, 10% of what that vision was. And Inquisition felt like, if I had to put a number to it, like getting close to 45%, which was incredible. It was really incredible. It felt like it was like we weren't what it wasn't what I don't think any project will ever be at 100, or even probably close to that, but to have come that close was something kind of incredible for me. And that's just my own personal numbers for it. Let's see. Can I talk about how and why Dragon Age 2 really separated itself in terms of the design from Origins? Well, I think people some people have spoken about this before. I think Mike Laidlaw and I think Neil Thompson's talked about this before, where it was a game that had a very it was coming in hot, and so design choices had to be made that would be sustainable and actually constructible. And it's almost like one of those time challenges where it's like, okay, if you have this much time, what can you actually reasonably produce that's going to actually hold together in that time? So I think something like that, where whereas I think that was another reason why Inquisition was such a fun project to work on, because it was like Dragon Age 2 set the course, and with Inquisition it felt like we really got a chance to like bite down into that. All right. Well, can I live with that? Maybe not. I think that perspective's maybe a little off.
Is it the perspective of the sphere?
I'm happy with that. I'm just thinking that maybe the railing's a bit high. Sorry, I mean how it evolved in terms of visual design. I feel like Origins was very standard fantasy design, and in 2 you can really see the Dragon Age world start to take shape. Thanks. Yeah, I think that was it. I mean, there were a few different factors. One was that it actually just straight up had a new art director, but it was the kind of thing where we could be more intentional, I think. Not that Origins wasn't intentional. They had their thing that they were trying to do. I wasn't involved in Origins, so there's a certain level that I can't really speak to in a definitive way. But yeah, I think part of it was looking at kind of like taking an honest self-assessment at what. Okay, we released Origins. What is a Dragon Age game? And then making some calls to make a stronger language. Because, like you said, I mean, we can be honest. Like Origins was very much a product of its development, of its window. Like, you know, Lord of the Rings was in that frame. It made there was just, yeah, it ended up carefully treading into that territory, I think. And I think, you know, for the idea of creating something that was more ownable and distinct, something that really stood aside, Matt Goldman, who stepped in as art director, decided to really do an examination of Dragon Age from what it is, almost like philosophically, and he used the memento mori idea, and that's where the Northern Renaissance really came out, where it was because it's about humans and the flawed nature of humans and the consequences of choices and all that sort of stuff. Thinking about the Northern Renaissance paintings, the memento moris, where it's reminders of your own mortality, and so that as a leaping off point was really good. And there's a philosophy that I really liked and that made a lot of sense to me, that I've always loved to call playing up the polygon. And that's the visual language of saying, why fight your medium? If our game is essentially made of polygons, why not design in a way that celebrates that rather than tries to hide it? So going for things that had a very utilitarian, faceted, survivable visual language just meant that we had a kind of a shape language that Matt liked to jokingly say gray and pointy, but truly, it kind of worked, and so it helped us to get this sense of consistency. I hope it didn't come across as disrespectful. I love Origins. I just thought DA2 and DAI really raised the bar tenfold each. Also, Goldman is a super funny dude. He really is. Yeah, he's awesome to work with. Yeah, he was the one that hired me originally. Okay, so I'm just adding some value to separate things a little bit here. I'm just going to do another... let's see. No, that's not it. Another flip test. Mm-hmm.
So do you think that for studying value, the cube or the egg rendering would be the best? Or I hesitate to say the best because I guess you can't say would that be because I was recently studying like a black and white photo to try and value group everything.
Okay.
To, although I'm not sure I had a clear enough plan of battle plan, whereas I guess with a cube you can kind of just you don't have to worry about getting all the details of the scene right or the perspective really. You can kind of just go straight in with the actual value calculation.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what you're trying to do. Because I think that the egg rendering exercise, my take on it is that it's a little handier for, say, a almost like penmanship in a way. It just getting the practice of physically rendering. Whereas it might be more like if you're trying to get a really thorough study thing going on, doing maybe a more finished portrait or illustration or still life might help you get both the penmanship and some more information.
Right.
I'm not sure exactly how to articulate that, but like doing cube renderings or egg renderings and stuff like that, it's really drilling down and focusing on the subtlety of how light is actually bouncing around, and it's because you're paying such close attention to just the little nuances in the surface of the forms and how that's all fitting together. Yeah, it's a really subtle thing. Hey, thanks for joining us. Sorry I couldn't join from Discord or couldn't stay longer. Oh, no worries. Glad you jumped in. Yeah, sorry. I'm not sure if that...
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. I guess it's kind of just something you just gotta do.
Yeah, like in some ways too, it's almost like one of those, eating your vegetables kind of things where it's it's probably just good to do it just because it's like a fundamental thing. And here I'm saying this having I haven't done it in a long time, and maybe I should, but I also find a lot of value in doing slightly longer figure drawings from reference.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I'm learning about drapery and I'm learning about things like that. Yeah, it can kind of help. How extensive a portfolio would I say would be needed when applying for an internship? I don't know. I think any portfolio should probably have. I keep hearing the numbers between say 10 to 15 at the most images that are kind of your best work. So that's probably a good window to keep it in. Gare Bear 87. Hi Matt, been a huge fan for years. Oh, thanks. And Michael De Nicola. Hello there. Hey, welcome. Do I like Marvel movies or is it whatever? They will forever have a soft spot in my heart, I think, because my wife and I, when we started dating, I think it was around, I can't remember if it was exactly, it was like around the time that Iron Man first came out, and so we went to go see that together, and we've just kind of made it a thing to just go see the Marvel movies when they come out, just because it's, you know, it's like it's pretty much guaranteed you're going to have a pretty solid time in the theater. You're probably rarely going to actually leave the theater thinking that was not worth it. So we've made an effort for every Marvel movie to, even when we had kids, like get a babysitter and do it up. So, yeah, I mean, I really like a lot of the stuff that they've done. I admire them greatly. The art team that's been working on there, it's been actually really neat. It was really super neat when Iron Man first came out, because Adi Granoff was part of the forums and was around a lot back in the day, and so to see his Iron Man, like his take on it, that super polished, like kind of more, because he was the first one to really do that industrial design version of Iron Man, where it's like super polished. So it's just amazing to see that on screen for the first time and be like, no way, he made it. That's awesome. I mean, he had made it before. He was a working comic artist. It was just like, you know, someone who was part of our community. It was really neat. But yeah, like I said, I admire them a lot. The fact that they've been able to pull off everything that they have. It's been handy too, because I've been out of comics for a long time. So, like I just don't follow them along. So it's been handy to have them in a more consumable, easily consumable format. See, this is like I was saying earlier, the pencil layer where I really futz around with expression. That's like the whole image is kind of, every image kind of depends on the expression. Yeah, the one thing I've mentioned a few times, like I really like some of the examples from Marvel movies where they've really done visual story well. Or they'll do their take on something, and it's, you know, the odd fun surprise. I'm actually one of the people who's a fan of what they did with the Mandarin. I know I get some people's disappointment, but I thought that was really fun. Did I read Battle Chasers? Heck yeah. Got my friend to read them today, and he seemed appalled that it ended at 9 issues. Rightly so. Kind of doesn't matter how many games they release. It's that was a special moment. And actually, when I'm working on Tellurion, there's something about that haunts me. That I don't want to let Tellurion be my own small version of repeat of that kind of thing. So it's like there will forever be a part of me that's like, no, you got to finish it. Don't let it be Battle Chasers. Otherwise, at least a small handful of people will be following me around for the rest of my life. He can play the Battle Chasers game. Yeah, it's just not the same. I think Mad's working on the next 3 issues now. I mean, at a certain point, you know, just make something and call it Half-Life 3. Just end the story in some way for Battle Chasers.
Are you aware that the Half-Life 3 or episode 3 plot synopsis got leaked?
Oh, the Mark Laidlaw stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it was
like after that. Oh, sorry, go on.
That was interesting, because like the way he framed it was kind of fascinating, where it was like in world but also out world.
Yeah.
The dude left the game on a cliffhanger again. Oh no, really? Oh shoot! And watch out, Matt. Here come the Anderstabbers. That's right. Okay, I think that's probably a good spot to end that tonight. This stage, I mean. I think getting from... So I went through I think this is the first time I've done the thumbnail process on here. So there's the thumbnail. We've got the pose and some of the graphic shape. And so roughly, after some tweaking and moving around, we've got the pencil. So guaranteed I will be done this before the next stream because the line work and it'll come together. I think the thumbnail to pencil transition is actually one of the bigger sort of, because there's a lot of like thought and process and humming and hawing over it. So tomorrow I will put up the last couple images so I can start trying to get caught up with myself here. It's kind of a luxury to have that many done. And in the meantime, let's see. Do I have anyone online right now who's got a critique in the critique section on Discord?
Oh, I've got some stuff in there.
Okay, well, you've been hanging out in the Discord. You've been ready. So, all right, Provoking Perch. You've been... let me just see if I can... I'm not so good at searching by... Oh, here we go. Okay. So you said you got some stuff? Okay, it's the Japanese one?
Oh yeah, you could do that one, or I've actually got two. I guess that maybe the last one, because that one's like kind of actually, I don't know, because that one's a storytelling. Like the first one's like more storytelling focused, and then the last one is like more just like a design.
Okay. Sure. How about I'll do the design. It's a pencil drawing.
It's a Wait, which one?
It's an Instagram link.
Instagram link. Oh no. If you scroll
even
to the
down
bottom
further. Oh, okay.
Yeah, right at the bottom.
Oh, here we go. Okay. So we've got this environment with some characters moving through it. Okay. Here, first I will copy. I'm just going to print screen it.
Okay.
And I will pop it in. Let's see. And then I will also, just because, so it's a monastic fortress throne room. 3-word anchors were stoic, isolated, and dominating. Nice. Okay, that's awesome. And here's a version with some hastily drawn characters for scale and more story context. Okay, cool. All right. Well, that sounds like a solid place to start. So let's see here. We've got Provoking Perch. Here's a piece I've been working on over the past week. It's a monastic fortress throne room. My 3-word anchors were stoic, isolated, and dominating. That is a great way to start off. Having especially if you can like, it's almost like having this trifecta of three words. I find that actually really 3 descriptors that really like narrows you down in a good way. And if you force yourself to think through it, it's almost like, I don't know. Let me know if you found this as an experience, but like when you pick those 3 words, if you pick them, did you pick those first and then do the illustration?
I actually, after I finished the illustration and put them in the critique, I thought like, if he does a critique of these, he'll need something to go off of. So like, I just thought like, okay, well these 3 words. So yeah, afterwards.
Okay, well let's talk about that then. Now that you have picked those 3 words, is there anything you would do to it differently?
I think maybe the guy's throne should be higher. It's like.
Oh, okay. In the first one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, here, how about do you mind if I just focus on one?
Oh yeah, sure, go for it.
Okay, I'm gonna blow this up a little bit. So just because like the motif is very similar throughout them, so I feel like we can pick one and kind of go for it.
This is the sewer grate environment.
It's the what? Sorry.
The sewer grate environment.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Because I like. I mean, overall, as a design language, I think that's working. That creating that lattice. And I would imagine that if you were to, this would be a case where I think, a lot of the questions that I'll get, because I'm a drawer for a concept artist, a lot of the
Yeah.
questions I get will be, do you use models? This would be one of those cases where I would highly suggest using a model.
Okay, because
And
like could do multiple.
well, just because it's going to be a whole lot of perspective drawing, which if that's
Well,
the exercise you're trying to do, fair enough.
mhm.
But one of the things about presenting this, especially as an idea and selling it, would be, I think, a huge advantage of trying it this way is the light that is going to fall into the room.
Okay,
Like
yeah.
that would be kind of why you do this, almost, is because you want really fascinating pools of light and things like that. So if you can build a 3D model, even in SketchUp, and shine the sunlight through it, just to get that feeling of what does it look like when it's falling on the floors and the pillars and all that, and you can use that in your
Mhm.
underpaintings.
Yeah.
But yeah, so let's see. Here's a piece where we're okay. Stoic, isolated, and dominating. And I'm just going to blow those words up too, because I think that is really good. Make sure that shows up there. So I'm just blotting it out a little bit here. Let's look at it full intensity. Stoic, isolated, and dominating. Yeah, I think you're right. I think first things first. You kind of have two. You have perspective lines here,
Mhm.
but then also like you kind of, there's kind of two horizons going on.
Right.
And if we were to pick one to get that feeling of isolation, of being that feeling of dominating, that feeling of
Mhm.
getting scale working for you and getting us lower, so that we are in fact kind of down on ground level here, looking up
Ooh,
at
okay.
the magnificence. So everybody's, and typically, I don't know if you've come across this. This is just like one of those simple little rule of thumbs that kind of work. But like, if the horizon line, like the horizon line is always at your eye level. So if we want to feel like we're at eye level,
Oh, yeah,
we put the other human's eyes on that scale, and then you can get you can
yeah.
get nice and small, but they're always kind of anchored there, and then even big ones, people in the foreground here. So now we're kind of at ground level here. We've got the throne.
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, I do really like I think the sharp kind of the sharp visual language is working for it. Like these, the steps and the inlays and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's a good motif. It might almost be worth, if there are softer elements that you could use you could use that as contrast. Like for example, like up in these pillars, you've got these soft curves, and then there's like
Hmm.
circles on the pillars, and there's these kind of hexagonal pieces that are sort of rounding out, just because hexagons are kind of on their way to circles.
Yeah.
So it could be an opportunity where either keeping things really angular all around,
Okay.
or using the contrast, using shape language to really contrast things up. So like, let's say if we do what we're talking about, we say it's like dominating. So we create this rhomboid, maybe with like a long, painful, supplicant staircase that you have to climb up on your knees or whatever. But then in the midst of all these like super hard shapes, and again here I'll just use this as I'll use the throne as the center point, and we'll kind of have I'm just gonna go really rough with this, but
Oh, that's fine.
so we've got the pillars coming out here, and so you're getting these awesome hard, sharp kind of jaggedy edges, and it'll just indicate that you've got these great jaggedy pillars with the cuts into them, and they almost could look even cooler if they were like irregular.
Yeah.
Um, just to add to that like hostility, like you kind of are at unease.
Hmm.
Um, if that's what you're wanting to go for. So we
Yeah,
step
yeah,
it
yeah,
out,
definitely.
and then in the background, you've also got this very geometric, harsh pattern going on. That
Hmm.
has some angles, and that's cool, and that's really influencing it. So it's starting to get super sharp. Even like the grid on the floor, it's starting to pull you in, and then possibly you have like the one the one round shape just for the and that's purely just for the sake of contrast. Is you put like one kind
Okay.
of jarring shape that's sort of like out of its element. Now
Yeah.
that obviously would have to be, either that's purely for the sake of just creating contrast. If it
Hmm.
if it supported the story even better, that's great. Like this is the usurper's throne or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas like there's someone who doesn't belong on this throne, or they took it and this is clearly foreign territory. Like,
Mhm.
it's something you could do it like with Daenerys Targaryen.
Yeah.
She could have the throne that doesn't fit or something like that in Marine or wherever she is. I forget, but that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or in this case too, you have like really monolithic, huge structures, and then maybe this is where it's at its most complex. Like this is another kind of contrast,
Hmm.
where you get like that's where the pattern even in the lattice gets super intricate, and maybe
Yeah.
the back of the throne actually is the lattice. It's just where the lattice has kind of come together.
Okay. Yeah, it's like that's the like they all converge to that.
Yeah, and
Because like
then
oh, yeah, God.
sorry, I was just gonna say then it's like it's still negative space, and then you have your person sitting on the throne is kind of then framed by the negative space there.
Hmm.
Becomes more enveloped in it, but then you're still playing with that like stoic, like thinking still stoic, isolated, dominating. And you'll notice that in the line work I tried to um, open it up a little bit more. Like
Right.
I widened the
Oh yeah. Yeah.
floor out and increased the scale by just shrinking the little people in there, just because that to get that like
Mhm.
that dominating and especially
Yeah.
isolated feeling, where it's just you could just imagine every footstep echoes
Oh
endlessly.
yeah. That's like I remember I wanted to like look like there's a little like like sound resonance
Yeah,
like
yeah.
um yeah, because like I guess in my one it kind of looks more like a corridor than like a huge like
Mm-hmm.
chamber.
Yeah, yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, and this is like reasonable. This is a reasonable scale. Like
Yeah.
it totally. This is about how big a throne room would probably be. But again,
Oh,
going off of the three descriptives.
I kind of based it off of the Windsor Castle throne room. So
Mm-hmm.
I guess in that sense it's kind of grounded, but
Sure.
maybe grounded in this case might not be enough.
Well, and I mean, if we want to say grounded, but but still have it feeling stoic, isolated, and dominating. I think there's
Hmm.
there's there's still opportunities for that. I mean, you could still, you could still move the character higher. You could still kind of empty it out a little bit more and make yourself feel kind of exposed. Like, because even having these pillars in the middle, it feels like you have that opportunity to hide. But there's something about,
Yeah.
to me, that feeling of isolation where it's like you are alone in this room.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I get you. Because
Hey,
like I
Capcat.
was thinking, oh, I was thinking like this would like take place in like a stealth game. So like that person
Oh, sure, yeah,
has like snuck in. They've snuck in, and all guards like, whoa, what are you doing? You're not going any
yeah, yeah.
further. So like, you're like, yeah, I think that if it's more open, because like one thing I tried to do is I tried not to have any corridors or staircases behind the throne, so like no one can sneak up on the guy.
Right, 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 right.
So like,
Okay, cool.
I tried to like, make like intentional decisions. Because
Sure.
actually, funnily enough, I'm going to be modeling this because it's for a school assignment, so you're kind of
Oh,
helping me
okay.
with my homework.
All right. Well, there you go. All right. I hope we get an A. Um,
Yeah.
but I like that too. I like that you
Cool.
have the guys up on the towers here,
Yeah.
and I was just thinking, looking at that, just to get that a little bit more, to draw the eye up to them too. Again, just to get that dominating feel of having
Yeah.
like armed
Like you're being
guards
watched.
up on these, almost like hunting. hunting tripods.
Oh, yeah,
So you're like, this is the one room where all of your stealth training is for nothing.
yeah.
It's just like, okay, good luck. Hey, laser bang bang, welcome. A 720 stream feels like a science fiction video quality compared to last week. Yeah, that's I'm only twitching. I'm only streaming to Twitch this time. I think the trying to do it Twitch and YouTube at the same time. It's just not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. So
Oh,
I'm recording it. Am I recording? I am recording it. Okay, good. Let's go all this time and I've not been recording it, so I can upload it to YouTube. Yeah. So I think does that give you something to work with?
yes, it does. Oh, but one more question.
Yes.
What kind of lighting do you think would best exemplify this? Like,
Mm-hmm.
in the case of this room, if currently like the roof is like segmented, so
Yeah.
it would cast like kind of like a shutter kind of a thing.
Okay.
Do you think that would?
Okay. Well, in the case of lighting, and thinking about your descriptions of stoic, isolated, and dominating, I think to do a really quick pass, personally, if that was the task I was given, here's what I would do. I would do a really, to feel really isolated and like you are alone and exposed, I would create there's this sort of motif that to me feels very isolated and kind of like you've been abandoned feeling, where like light is kind of quietly pouring in from the top, and then if you have these like patches of light that you're trying to move between in a stealth scenario, that like they're these kind of hotter spots that and maybe there's one falling on here and maybe some indicate volume a little bit. Some of them are falling on the pillars.
Oh yeah, in James Gunn's book, he talks about like using that as like a way of indicating depth.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's one of volume's primary awesome benefits is indicating depth, and that and indicating shape too. It's I would say volume is at its best when it's in service of silhouette and that kind of clarity. So this is generally the kind of thing I would probably do if put to it. So I've got some like bits of light coming down from the top here. Let me just no, not that, no, normal. Come on, what are you doing? Where'd you go? I've lost my layers. Oh, I just drew that right on the line mark. Okay, perfect. Not what I was trying to do. What are you doing? Stop. Stop making... Stop beeping at me. Okay. Yeah, so I think it would be something along these lines where it's got these like hot lights coming in, and or not hot lights, but like these kind of like quiet. It's almost got that like library feeling.
Yeah, like one of my friends told me that it kind of looked like the Jedi Temple library.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can have like that kind of melancholy.
Yeah.
Gray sky out the back, and then I'm just roughly painting in that kind of lattice. And then two, I'll just desaturate that. Wait. Oh, I know. Okay, yeah, so it takes some fiddling, but let me zoom out. -1 point for bad layer management. Absolutely. No, I'm all over the place here. How are things going? Hey, Nevelin. We're just doing a little paint over here. So if we're following along, I flattened all over. This is like the worst layer management ever. All that beeping was just like freaking me out. Okay. So stoic, isolated, and dominating. Let's just throw the two up and we can talk about the differences here. So
Okay.
mine is looking pretty scruffy now by comparison, but as visual
No,
note
it's fine.
taking,
Yeah.
should get the point across of like playing up those verticals, making sure you've picked one horizon, a lighting scheme that is meant to be very isolating and cold and kind of emphasize the height a little bit,
Yeah.
and
Cool.
then using contrast to draw the eye to the throne, whether it's in shape or complexity.
Okay.
So yeah, hopefully that's enough to work with.
Oh yeah, that was very helpful. Thanks.
For sure. Do you want to take a screenshot of this? Here, I'll put it as close to the front.
Yes. Oh, thanks.
And then you can use that as your reference. I'll leave that up for a second. So 11. It's 11:30 here. 100 points for everybody who actually is like some of these people who are up at like 4 a.m. That's amazing. I really appreciate it, and thank you guys for asking questions and comments and stuff like that. Whether it was in the chat or well, basically just you in the Discord.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, Provoking Perch, for hanging out.
Oh, no problem. I'm very surprised that I got here an hour early to like make sure I got a.
Oh, sure.
Place, but I assumed that it would fill up pretty quick.
Yeah, I think the for sure. Well, I think too. It's I think just doing it on Twitch and not on YouTube, it's a little quieter. There's not quite as many people, but it also means that the stream works and it actually runs. So not too shabby. So we've got thank you for coming through this process. We've got a thumbnail and we've got a pencil for that one. And so I will post those other two in the morning, and I will see you guys all next time.
Sorry,
one more? Yeah, throw it out.
Okay. So for the critiques, it might be useful to have like a channel in the not channel, but like an area in the Discord channel where like you post the like the output of the critique.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea.
Then we can have like a collection of all the.
Yeah, right.
Like,
Very, yeah.
If someone else, it can be accessed by like if someone else is like, oh, this person did like a similar thing, so maybe I could,
Yeah, no, that's a good idea, for sure. Okay, I will set that up. Anyway, thanks again. Awesome. Sorry to everybody who just jumped in. I've got to go to bed, but I will see you again next Thursday at 8:35 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. So have a good night.